You know, one of the big contenders, as we talked about a little bit earlier, for buying Warner Brothers is Netflix. And maybe arguably the most successful director of all time, not the greatest of all time, that's Steven Spielberg, but a man who holds three of the top four all-time highest grossing films in history, Jimmy C, the good Canadian kid James Cameron, well, he has some thoughts about the idea of Netflix getting it. Remember, there are three contenders right now for buying Warner Brothers: Paramount, Netflix, and NBC Universal Comcast. Those are the three companies that have submitted bids and will be submitting a second round of bids. Well, James Cameron's got some pretty strong feelings about one of them that he says would be an absolute disaster if they got it, and that's Netflix. This comes to us from Yahoo Entertainment via Coming Soon, who wrote the following. James Cameron is pushing back against the idea of Netflix taking over Warner Brothers, calling the idea a disaster. The director shared his concerns in a recent interview, suggesting that Netflix's approach to theatrical cinema is incompatible for the future of Warner Brothers. With industry speculation continuing, Cameron's remarks have sparked significant discussion across social media. James Cameron has expressed significant concerns about the possibility of Netflix purchasing Warner Brothers, saying that he does not believe the streaming platform is the right company to take over the studio. Now, just so you know, I also have said that I think Netflix getting Warner Brothers would be a complete disaster. However, I said, if Netflix remains committed to letting Warner Brothers stay as a standalone company, kind of like the way several companies work under Disney, like Disney still has controlling power over them, but they let them run and operate. And if Warner Brothers is allowed to put out their films theatrically, as Warner Brothers has always done, that would soften my take on Netflix potentially getting Warner Brothers. And of course, we did a report last week that Netflix has publicly said, we are going to continue to let Warner Brothers put out films theatrically if they do. Okay, that sounds good, but my boy Jimmy C isn't buying it. Said this, speaking on the Town podcast with Matt Bellani, the director said he is firmly in favor of Paramount taking over instead. Cameron said, I think Paramount is the best choice. Netflix would be a disaster. Sorry, Ted, but geez. He pointed to Netflix CEO Ted Sarandos' past claims that theatrical releases are no longer necessary, when they clearly are, noting Sandros has gone on the record saying theatrical films are dead, theatrical is dead, quote unquote. Now this is where it gets interesting. James Cameron goes on, Cameron also reacted strongly to Netflix's promise to increase theatrical releases if it acquired Warner Brothers. He said, it's sucker bait. The director criticized the practice of releasing films briefly in cinemas only to qualify for awards, describing it as fundamentally rotten to the core. He added, a movie should be made as a movie for theatrical, and the Academy Awards mean nothing to me if they don't mean theatrical. I think they've been co-opted, and I think it's horrific. All right, there's two interesting things here that are coming from our boy Jimmy C. One of the things is, and we'll talk about first, we'll get to the whole Academy Award situation in a second. But one of the things that he points out and mentions is the fact that he simply does not believe Netflix. Remember, I said, I'm more okay with Netflix getting it. I mean, that wouldn't be my first choice, but I'd be more okay with it if they stayed committing to letting Warner Brothers films go theatrically. So Netflix comes out and says, yeah, Scout's honor. We're going to put out Warner, but we're going to honor theatrical. We're going to let Warner Brothers puts out movies theatrical. Yay, theatrical. Okay. Here's the thing. James Gunn just said the equivalent of liar, liar, pants on fire, which might be the name of his next movie. That should be the subtitle of Avatar Fire and Ash. Avatar Fire and Ash. Liar, liar, pants on fire. You're welcome. Send me a check. All right. So he straight up just doesn't believe Netflix. And listen, I mean, it wouldn't be the first time some corporation made some wild, grand-sounding promise and then backed out on it. And James Cameron, who's been around this business for a long time, he just straight up doesn't believe him. He thinks maybe they're just saying that to make the Warner Brothers shareholders more sympathetic to Netflix, maybe. You know, the whole idea that, hey, Warner Brothers will still be Warner Brothers. But James Cameron is saying, what's the word? Malarkey. Is that an old-timey word? This is before my time. Malarkey, says James Cameron. They're lying. They ain't going to honor that. Which, I don't know, man. He's been around the business a long time. He has some thoughts, and maybe his thoughts are right. So that's something, because listen, if Netflix does take over Warner Brothers, and they just, what's the word I'm looking for? They just consume it. They just absorb Warner Brothers into itself and carry on with it, you know, having no commitment to theatrical or anything like that. They're going to continue along their path to destroying movies. And that's what Netflix is doing. Netflix is destroying movies. They are. I've gone on why many times. I won't relitigate it all here. But Netflix is destroying movies. They're not just destroying movie theaters and movie going. They're destroying movies. And I've explained 10 points on why a million times. I won't do it again here. So that would be very concerning. Again, if they're telling the truth, okay, maybe there could be some upside. But if they're lying like James Cameron thinks they are, well, that would be pretty damn bad. But I want to touch on again, and forgive me if this is like a little pet issue for me, when James Cameron goes on and says, listen, Netflix films should not even be allowed for the Academy Awards. I still agree with him. I do. Listen, there's been a lot of discourse and a lot of back and forth about the validity or lack thereof of Netflix's movies being eligible for Oscars. Like, we just found out that BAFTA just rejected K-pop Demon Hunters. And K-pop Demon Hunters not eligible for BAFTA awards because they're streaming before they're a movie, before they're in theaters. And again, a lot of debate on the advantages, disadvantages, the qualities or lack thereof, the good reasons and the bad, why Netflix movies maybe should be eligible for Academy Awards or maybe they should not be. And remember, there are rules, and some Netflix movies meet those Academy rules, and if they meet those rules, then they're eligible. But James Cameron is basically suggesting here the Academy needs to change its criteria. They need to change the requirements because they're not movies. They're TV movies. Now, again, in all the history of all the back and forth, both sides debating, discussion, all the discourse about whether Netflix should be considered for Oscars or not, I have not yet heard anybody address this one key fundamental thing that has been a real stickler for me, which is this. There have always been TV movies. It's not new with streaming. Streaming didn't introduce the idea of movies on television. TV movies have been around long before I was born. All right? There have always been TV movies. And as such, movies that are made primarily for home viewing, there's always been an awards for those. They're called Emmys. Emmys have categories for best TV movies. And I'm sorry, but Hulu movies are TV movies. Disney original films, Netflix original films, they're TV movies. They're made for home viewing, either on a laptop screen, a television screen, I don't have my phone here, your phone screen, whatever, they're made for home viewing. And historically, traditionally, forever, the place those movies get honored is the Emmys because they're TV. They're not film. They're not movies. Movies, like James Cameron, the most successful director of all time, saying that movies means theatrical. So, historically, the way it's always been done is that movies that are made for theaters, they get honored at the Oscars. Movies made for television and home viewing, they are honored at the Emmys. Not to say one is more important than the other, but they're two different things. And while streaming is new, movies made for the television are not. And I still have not heard a valid reason why movies that are made original by Netflix should not be made eligible. And by the way, others too. I want to include Disney Plus, Hulu, Peacock, whichever streamer makes original movies for their streaming service, I've not heard one valid reason why the place to honor those is in the traditional place they've always been honored, which is at the Emmys. I've heard not one valid reason why they should be included in the Academy Awards when no other TV movies in history ever have been, to the best of my knowledge. A little caveat there, maybe there is an example or two out there. I'd love to see it if there is, but generally speaking. So James Cameron is kind of suggesting here that the Academy needs to change their criteria, because right now it's really easy to make your movie eligible for the Oscars. Play it in like a single screen or two in Los Angeles and New York for a weekend or two, and you're good. That's all you really got to do. Now, if they want to put Knives Out, Wake Up Dead Man and Knives Out Mystery, if they want to put that in theaters for a month before it ever gets to streaming, I'm okay with that. Then I'm okay with saying, yeah, Oscar eligible. But this whole thing about, just playing some little obscure screen somewhere, which is all you really have to do for a couple of days, and boo, Oscar eligible. Other than that, listen, I'm not saying good Netflix movies, which is an oxymoron, because there's only about 1 out of every 100 is any good. But I'm not saying good or great Netflix movies shouldn't be honored. I'm just saying I agree with James Cameron on this. Honor them, sure, but honor them where they're supposed to be honored, where they've always historically been honored. Honor them at the Emmys. They have no place at the Oscars, as far as I'm concerned, and I agree with him on that. Anyway, guys, question is for you. What do you make of James Cameron's comments? Several things. Number one, Netflix getting Warner Bros. Would be a disaster. Number two, he's calling their claim that they'll let Warner Bros. Movies still be put out theatrically lies. And number three, again bringing up the debate about whether Netflix films should even be eligible for the Oscars. Whatever you think about them, guys, jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching this video. Make sure you like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget, we have a daily podcast called the John Campea Show podcast, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcasting app of choice. Go and subscribe to it today so it'll be there when you need it.